This is Miles. Still here. Still broadcasting. Still trying to make sense of what we no longer stand on. If you're hearing this, then your feet are touching the earth. Again. If they ever left. If they ever came back. It's been, hours. Days? Time slips differently now, like everything else. The clock stuttered when it happened. Some stopped altogether. My recorder blinked 12, 12, 12 for 9 straight minutes. 9 minutes. That's how long we floated. 9 minutes when the world let go of us. No warning, no sirens, no tremors, just one quiet moment where gravity folded in on itself. I felt the soles of my boots loosen. The weight of the air shifted. Then I saw my coffee cup lift. Not spill, not fall, just rise, like it had been waiting for permission. The silence was the worst. No wind, no birds, just things unfastening from the world. I had an old oil lamp beside me. It hovered a few inches above the desk, flame flickering sideways like it couldn't decide what direction meant anymore. I didn't float far. The anchor line I tied to the steel frame 2 years ago, just in case, finally proved useful. Funny. I thought it would be a storm that tried to take me, not the sky itself. I'm still shaking, not from cold. Cold I can manage, but this was absence. Absence with intent. I don't know how many we lost. I know some of you were out in the open, in the highlands, on rooftops, on bridges. I know some of you were asleep when it happened, and I'm sorry if you woke up weightless and alone. If you're out there, breathe with me. We're still here, still bound to something, even if it doesn't always pull the way it used to. This is Miles, broadcasting from what's left of the ground. It wasn't chaos, not like you'd expect. It was too quiet for chaos. Birds lifted in slow spirals, their wings confused. Not flapping, just drifting like forgotten notes. My station's antenna cables rose like vines reaching backward. I watched a moth hover, wings still, as if time itself was in retreat. Some of you sent in messages, your children clutching furniture as their shoelaces began to drift upward. One woman wrote that her husband, already frail, floated from the hospital bed like a prayer. They found him in the ceiling tiles. There's something cruel about gentleness in disasters. Nothing screamed. Everything just released. I saw buildings moan under the strain, old brickwork trying to hold its history while the beams beneath wanted to rise. I don't think the earth knew how to mourn it, so it paused. And then the fall. The world remembered gravity. All at once. It came back like a judgment. Like the sky realized it made a mistake and tried to shove us back where we belonged. Some didn't land whole. Some didn't land at all. If you're hearing this, if you fell but rose again, you've survived something most people never even imagined. 9 minutes. No down. No weight. Just the memory of falling upward. The signal's been erratic. But the inbox bloomed after it returned. Broken voices from every edge of what remains. One came from a sailor. He was adrift off Newfoundland when it happened. Said the ocean lifted in glassy plates. The compass spun backward, and the waves froze mid-crest. He tied himself to the mast and whispered into the static. "Am I still real?" he asked. "I hear you, brother. You are." Another was from Kavi, a climber in the Andes. She was above cloud line when the clouds lifted with her. She floated inches from the cliff face, eyes locked with a hawk that couldn't flap. "We both waited for gravity," she said. "It came for him first." Even a voice from an old rig worker in Alberta said the drills rose 1/2 meter, like the earth was exhaling them. "We thought the planet had had enough of us," he said. "Turns out it just forgot to hold on." It's strange, the way people tell stories after something unexplainable. Not with panic, but reverence, like we all brushed up against the edge of something holy or wrong. Or both. If you're still out there, keep sending messages. Keep whispering into wires. Even broken radio waves remember the weight of words. This is Miles. Still listening. There's a new term floating through the networks. Event drift. Mira first mentioned it. You remember her. Atmospheric physicist turned wanderer. She says this wasn't just gravity skipping, it was reality slipping, not a mechanical failure, a metaphysical one. She described it as the fraying of constants, that maybe the laws we've leaned on, gravity, time, orientation, are unraveling thread by thread. Not gone, just sliding out of phase. She pointed to minor anomalies over the past 6 months, clocks resetting in unison across different hemispheres. Migratory birds vanishing mid-flight, GPS satellites blinking back with coordinates from 2 decades ago. It's like the universe has a fever, and sometimes, in the middle of the night, it tosses in its sleep. She believes we're inside an atmospheric rupture, a momentary glitch in whatever algorithm once held us in place, and once something slips, it drifts. I don't know what to believe, but I do know this. The world doesn't feel linear anymore. It loops, repeats, it forgets us in patches. Last night, I dropped a wrench. It hovered for 3 seconds before falling. I've stopped trusting the floor. If you feel that too, the strange tilt beneath your steps, know this, you are not mad. You're not alone. You're just living in the shape of the unseen. This is Miles, still drifting, still grounded. Some screams never make a sound. In those 9 minutes, the world exhaled and forgot how to pull us back. And what rose wasn't just matter. It was memory, voice, certainty. I've been collecting your recordings, playing them in the quiet when the signal's too weak to speak over. They arrive broken, glitching, beautiful. Sometimes they come in as whispers, sometimes as sobs. One came from a father in Jakarta. He said he watched his boy float toward the ceiling fan and instinctively grabbed his ankle, held him there trembling. Said the boy didn't scream, just blinked, like it was a dream he hadn't chosen yet. Another came from a woman in Oslo. She was cooking when the stove unbolted itself. She didn't run. She just stared as oil droplets rose around her like pollen. I was weightless, she said, but I'd never felt heavier. You'd think we'd panic when gravity left, but we didn't. We froze. Because panic needs ground to stand on. And when the birds lifted and the trees reached after them with rootless longing, I think the earth tried to remember the word for anchor and failed. I'm not sure what terrifies me more, the loss of pull, or how easily we adapted in those seconds, as if some part of us already knew it would happen, as if buried deep in our bones was the memory of a time before down existed. If you're listening now, and your voice cracked, but never escaped your throat that day, I heard it anyway. The world did, even in silence. Grief is gravity. And then it came back. Gravity, not as mercy, as consequence. The fall wasn't cinematic. It wasn't something a camera would have lingered on. It was jagged, random, unfair, like a drunk god reaching down and slapping the table. The sailor I told you about, the one from Newfoundland? His second transmission came hours later, short, cut with static. My crewmate didn't come down, he said. Neither did the sails, just torn cloth and empty lines. And then silence. Haven't heard from him since. Kansas, a town with no name anymore, lost half its schoolhouse roof. When it landed, it took the teacher's voice with it. Not her life, just her ability to speak. Some losses are strange like that. Small organs, large meanings. They say, in Finland, a communications tower dislodged from its base and flew 20 meters before crumpling into a glass factory. The irony is hard to ignore. Signal into silence. What did we expect, really? The Earth's grip came undone, and then, in shame, it tightened too quickly. Everything that rose without reason fell without order. I walked outside afterward. Trees were split, insects crushed midair. My weather balloon, gone. But it was the sky that unsettled me most. Not what was in it, what wasn't. Whole things, gone. A flock, a drone, someone's dog. The sky has always belonged to dreams, but now it's keeping them. If you lost something to the air, well, not just a body, but a tether, you're not the only one. I've stopped looking up for answers. The sky owes too many debts now. Mira sent a new voice log last night. Short, frantic, weighted in that way science becomes when it brushes too close to poetry. She believes what happened was a field collapse, not mechanical, not man-made, atmospheric. A cascade triggered by extreme pressure, thinning near the poles. Maybe methane destabilizing ionic fields. Maybe we breached some quantum threshold we weren't built to measure. She called it a momentary absence of anchoring. I've never heard gravity spoken of like a promise broken. She explained how Earth's gravity isn't uniform. It pools, it flexes, it breathes. And for 9 minutes, it held its breath everywhere at once. A harmonic pause across every fault line and forest edge. And then the pulse that followed, not just return, but recoil. She fears it's the first of many. That reality is entering a state of feedback, a recursive loop where each event births its own shadow, and what we felt may not be the collapse itself, but the echo of a greater unraveling. I told her to stop broadcasting if it gets worse. She didn't answer that part. We're not alone in our wondering. Across survivor frequencies, they're calling it the slip. Not very scientific, I know, but accurate in its own way. A brief fall upward. Mira's last words before the tape cut. It's not just that gravity failed. It's that the rules permitted it. And if that's true, what else have the rules quietly allowed? It came in at 3:17 a.m., a child's voice. Weak, tinny, almost like it wasn't being transmitted, just remembered by the air itself. She said, "Mommy's still up there." That's all. No call sign, no coordinates, just the words. I replayed it 14 times before recording this. Tried to trace the source. Nothing. No origin ping, no rebound trail. Like the signal had never passed through towers at all. Just rose. And stayed. I don't know if it's real. Or if it's a fragment. A ghost of a voice caught between cloud bands. But I believe her. Because there are too many things we haven't found. Too many names we haven't scratched from the missing boards. There's something unbearable about permanence in the sky. We bury to grieve. But how do you mourn what floats? If you hear that voice too, don't be afraid. It doesn't want to haunt us. It wants to be answered. This is Miles. Still receiving. Still surviving. We used to mark loss with dirt. Now we look up. I keep a list. Not of names, but of things that floated and never came back. Not the grand or dramatic. Not the people even. The ordinary things, the fragile, the forgotten. Weather balloons. Dozens, maybe hundreds, that were meant to track pressure systems. Trace methane plumes across the Arctic shelf. They drifted up like data in prayer. And now, somewhere between here and the ionosphere, they're just spinning ghosts. Instruments with no hands to read them. The old crow I used to feed, she was clever, would tap on the glass every morning at sunrise. Last week, she took off before the event. I watched her wings fail to dip, just rise and rise, until she blurred into nothing. I still put food out. I know she's not coming back. But memory feeds something too. And then there was the church bell. Abandoned, rusted, still bolted into the stone when the earth let go. It rose, slowly, impossibly, as if forgiven. It shattered on descent. The sound rang through the valley like a hymn torn open mid-syllable. Now there's only silence where the bell used to ring. These weren't just objects. They were anchors. The things we lost to the sky weren't taken. They were unmoored, released. And something in that breaks me because they remind me that gravity is not just a force, it's a contract, one we signed without knowing, and now it's being rewritten. If you've lost something, not just someone, but some small piece of continuity, I see you. You're not alone in the ache. We all have gaps in the sky now. The Ember Convoy used to pass through here twice a season. A scatter of mechanics, scavengers, 2 retired nurses, and a young woman named Ada, who could rewire a generator while singing songs I hadn't heard since before the burnouts. Ada laughed like someone who hadn't been hurt yet, or someone who had, and learned how to live beside the scar. She always kept tethered when she worked. Not just a safety line, but a ritual. She said it reminded her that she wasn't just floating through life anymore. That day, the day everything lifted, Ada was welding a joint on one of the convoy's outer rigs. The recordings are grainy, but they caught it. The static hum, the sudden silence, and then her voice, rising like music underwater. She laughed. I don't know why. Maybe she thought it was a dream. Maybe she believed, for one final second, that it was her turn to fly. Then the tether snapped, a clean, sharp crack, and the recorder caught only wind after that. No scream, just the wind remembering where she'd been. They found her radio days later, in the upper tree line, still blinking, still recording. I've played that laughter again and again, not because I want to mourn her, but because it's the last sound I have that doesn't carry fear. It reminds me that, even in the collapse, someone still found wonder, still laughed when the earth forgot her, and I think that matters. Mira's voice cut through last night like a blade wrapped in velvet, gentle, precise. She'd been tracking flux readings along the magnetopause, comparing them to gravitational anomalies over the last 2 years. She says it's not just the gravity that's shifting, it's the shell holding it. The magnetic field is thinning, losing shape, losing charge. She called it the Earth's fading skin. With each solar flare, with each wave of high atmospheric turbulence, we lose a little more of what keeps the world structured. And gravity, for all its certainty, is drawn to structure. Without it, it begins to wander, to pulse, to forget. The fractures in the field may be letting through pulses, waves that disrupt the pull beneath our feet. The Greenland signal we're hearing. It might not be a beacon. It might be a leak. She ended the transmission with a warning. This may happen again, and next time it might not stop at 9 minutes. There was no closing line, no goodbye, just the hum of deep frequency data trails. Sometimes I think science is another way of saying we don't know, but we're trying. I've stopped looking down when I grieve. Down used to be where we buried things, where roots grew, where time moved forward. But now, when something is lost, really lost, I find myself staring skyward, into the empty, into the pale. I see names written in absence. I see Ada, the crow, the church bell. I see my brother, though he was lost long before gravity gave up. They say grief has weight, but mine has lift. It moves like vapor. It rises and doesn't return. If you're listening and your mourning feels directionless, it's not. You're just learning to grieve in the direction the world forgot to hold. This is Miles. Still grounded, still drifting, still broadcasting. After the event, there was silence, not static, not signal loss. Silence. 48 hours where no voice broke through, no recordings, no listener pings, no Mira, just the hum of an open frequency, stretched thin across the hollow of the world. I stayed on air the whole time, speaking into nothing, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if it was the machines that had failed or us. I began to wonder if we had collectively agreed, without speaking, to stop making sound, as if we were mourning something too large for language, as if the air itself was too bruised to carry vibration. It reminded me of when my mother passed. The day after, I couldn't speak. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Words felt disrespectful, too sharp for the softness of grief. Maybe the world felt the same. Maybe it needed those 2 days to gather itself again. There are theories, of course. Mira suggested electromagnetic interference. When the magnetic field twists, it does more than bend compasses. It stutters data streams, warps transmission paths, can cause what she called a null pulse, an atmospheric refusal. But part of me still believes it wasn't technical. It was a choice, a biological moment of stillness, a shared breath held between those of us who remained. And in that breath, I swear, I could feel every name we hadn't spoken yet. Every question we're still afraid to ask. 48 hours, not empty, just quiet. And in the quiet, something like truth. The first voice to break the silence wasn't human. It came from the Mariana Relay, a deep-sea monitoring station that's been mostly abandoned since the collapse. Some old tech still hums down there, pinging pressure data, temperature gradients, seafloor shifts. Yesterday, it sent something else, a signal, rhythmic, deliberate, not mechanical. I ran it through analog filters, slowed it by half, then by half again. Beneath the compression artifacts, I heard something breathing. Not air, not speech, something slower, broader. Like lungs stretched over tectonic plates. It pulsed, 6 seconds apart, then 5, then 7. I forwarded it to Mira. She replied with one word. Organic? That's the thing. It doesn't sound alive, but it doesn't sound dead either. It could be a pressure shift pattern, a resonance loop caught between layers of salt water and fault, or something ancient the oceans have kept hidden. And now, maybe, they've let it sing. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's even meant for us. But I know this. Before the collapse, we filled the seas with noise. Sonar, tankers, drills, war. Now, with all that gone, the ocean speaks back. And what it says is slow and cold and impossibly old. If you hear it too, don't be afraid. It's not always the loudest voice that carries meaning. Sometimes it's the one you almost miss. Then, on the third day, a voice, Lucian. He used to be a linguist before the drift. Now he floats aboard a barge city somewhere between what used to be Iceland and nowhere. His voice crackled through, low, solemn, dipped in salt and scripture. He said that when the event hit, people on the barge tied themselves down, not just for safety, but ceremony. They used old prayer cloths, wedding veils, cords woven from childhood blankets. He said, we tethered our bodies to the things that remembered who we were. Some still float above the deck, not people, just personal things. A photo, a page from a Torah, a toothbrush. They tied them to railings and left them. Markers of weight, he said the elders called the weightlessness, a divine inhale. Not punishment, not apocalypse, just God, breathing in. Lucian has a soft way of speaking. You have to lean into the silence to catch him fully. He talked about a child named Rosa, who wouldn't sleep unless her mother hummed while holding onto a rusted winch, so she won't drift. Rosa whispered. Her mother said, you won't. But still, she hummed every night. Lucian's final words were, faith is not what keeps you aloft. It's what keeps you near the people who matter when you rise. I don't know how much I believe anymore, but I believe in Lucian's voice and in the hands that still hold on to cloth. The silence changed me. It thickened around the edges. Not absence like a hole, absence like a weight. I felt it in the ribcage, the kind of heaviness that doesn't bruise but leaves you hollow. We used to measure loss in things that ended. Now we measure it in what doesn't return, in what fails to echo, in voices we once knew would answer. The hardest part of collapse isn't the noise. It's what fades after. There's a loneliness to the world now that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from knowing others are out there also speaking, and still, we don't reach each other. Lucian called it floating faith. Mira calls it drift signal loss. I call it the new gravity. A gravity of silence, and still, I broadcast. Because maybe the only way to survive silence is to give it shape. This is Miles. Still here, still listening. We used to weigh newborns in grams. Now, we measure them by tether. Reports are spreading quietly, carefully, of children born after the event who don't seem fully anchored to the world. One child in Montana had bones so light the doctors thought she was preterm. She wasn't. She was full weight on paper. But she moved like mist in a room with no air pressure. When she cries, her feet lift slightly. They've started keeping her in a weighted sling. Another, in the ruins of Hanoi, dreams of falling. Not down, but up. She wakes up midair, arms outstretched, always reaching for something above the ceiling. They say her heartbeat is slower than normal. They say it syncs with the tides. These children aren't broken. They're different, born in a world where gravity is no longer a certainty, but a variable. Mira calls it epigenetic drift. She says their cells remember what we floated through. That trauma isn't just passed through scars, but through DNA, through breath, through the womb. It makes sense in a way. We were changed by that rupture. The air forgot how to hold us. The earth exhaled. Why shouldn't birth follow suit? There's something else, something quieter. These children don't cry like they used to. Their lungs seem confused by gravity's weight. One nurse called it the breathless calm. She meant it as a warning. I heard it as a prayer. If this world is rewriting itself, maybe our children are its punctuation, and maybe we, the ones still heavy with history, are the run-on sentence it's trying to end. There's a little girl I sometimes think about when the nights get too still. Her name was Isla. She came through this region with a northbound caravan, no more than 6 years old, shoulders always hunched like she was carrying something larger than her frame allowed. She had a backpack full of rocks, literal rocks, smooth ones, river-worn, marked with chalk. Each one had a name. She told me, in a voice barely louder than static, that each rock was a person she lost. When she walked, they clinked softly against each other, like a choir of ghosts. She stayed one night at the outpost, slept curled beneath the transmitter shelf. At sunrise, I found her in the courtyard, tracing letters into the ash with her fingers. She wrote her mother's name, then her brother's, then mine. I asked why. She didn't look up, just said, "So you don't float away." I didn't float, Isla. I'm still here. But some part of me, I think it's still drifting. That little girl carried more gravity in that bag than the Earth managed in 9 whole minutes. And when the convoy left, she waved without smiling. Just a hand, rising slowly, as if resisting lift. If you ever hear this, Isla, you remembered me before I forgot myself. Thank you. A nurse named Anya sent a handwritten message to the tower last week. She's stationed at a subterranean birthing shelter near what used to be Marseille. She wrote that the last few births have been strange. Not always tragic, but always different. One infant arrived early. Lungs underdeveloped, skin translucent, heartbeat fast. The mother said she never felt the baby drop. The nurse confirmed it. The child stayed suspended during labor, as if refusing to descend. They tried to incubate her, to oxygenate and weigh her down. But she slipped away on the 3rd day. The cot still rocks, even when untouched. Anya says this isn't an anomaly. She's seen 6 births like it in 2 months. Some last hours, some days, and yet there was one. She was born during the event, not before, not after, during. Anya said she hovered mid-delivery, the mother weightless, the child cradled in air. No gravity, no instruments, just light and breath and suspended silence. They caught her in a blanket, laughing through tears. She's alive. Her name is Loon. She doesn't cry often, but when she does, birds outside fall silent. Anya wrote, "She was born without falling. I think she remembers a sky we haven't seen yet." I keep that letter folded beneath my transmitter coil, because sometimes, when I feel the world slipping again, I remember that a child came through it and stayed. Some say the earth shuddered that day. Some say it broke. But I wonder, what if it was something else? What if those 9 minutes weren't collapse, but labor? What if gravity didn't fail? It paused to make room. Room for the ones arriving, the driftborn, the light-boned, the ones who don't fall. Maybe it wasn't death we floated through. Maybe it was a beginning we were never meant to understand. I don't know. But I'm still here. Still broadcasting, still trying to find language for what we've become. This is Miles, still grounded, still drifting, still listening. They say the body remembers trauma, but so does the machine. The night gravity failed. My instruments didn't just break. They lied. The altimeter spun in lazy loops, like it was trying to guess at height with no ceiling to trust. The pressure gauge inverted for 27 seconds. That's not a malfunction. That's a reversal. This GPS flickered. First showing coordinates from here, then from the middle of the Indian Ocean, then from 1997. I watched a seismograph trace flatline. Not calm. Not nothing. Just absence. Like the planet's pulse skipped and never finished the beat. The sky looked clear that night, but my radar, short range, mapped dozens of blips rising vertically, then vanishing. Some of them returned. Some didn't. One of the balloons I lost 3 winters ago came back online, broadcasting old weather patterns from the wrong hemisphere. Its battery should have been dead. It was last tracked over the Arctic. It reappeared just above what's left of Bolivia. I don't trust the numbers anymore. Not because they lie, but because they tell a truth we don't yet have language for. There's a kind of math in madness. And lately, everything hums at the wrong frequency. What's strange is the machines didn't all fail. Some adapted, some paused, like they were waiting for something to pass, like they knew. When I reset the array, I found a brief entry in the diagnostic logs. Gravity conflict, resolution deferred. Defer to what? If you're listening from another station, another pocket of ground where text still clicks and hums, check your logs. Look at the anomalies. Look for timestamps that make no sense because something passed through us. And the machines, they felt it too. There's a sound I can't explain. It came faintly at first, a low frequency riding the edge of static. I thought it was nothing. Then it repeated. Same interval, same resonance. Every 7 seconds, then 6, then 5. I isolated it, filtered the background noise, amplified the waveform, and there it was. A pulse, not human, not mechanical, but rhythmic, intentional. It reminded me of whale song, but slower, wider somehow. A kind of breath drawn from a lung that spans continents. I played it for Mira over an encrypted relay. She didn't speak for 30 seconds. Then she whispered, "That's not atmospheric." Could it be a beacon, an echo, or something else? Something buried that's begun to rise? I tracked it to a band just below the ionospheric cutoff. Too deep for commercial satellites. Too clean for tectonic interference. Whatever's making it, it wants to be found. It doesn't sound desperate or dangerous. It sounds patient. like something that's been waiting for us to quiet down. And now that we have, it speaks. It might be natural. Something awakened in the ecological fracture, or it might be us. Some remnant of old code, a failsafe, forgotten. But I've heard transmissions my whole life, and I know when something is listening back. This doesn't just fill space, it shapes it. I've started broadcasting tones in reply. Softly, small intervals, 1 note per hour, no response. Yet, but the signal continues, unbroken, unchanging, like it already knows I'm here. If you hear it too, write me. We'll decode it together, or at least feel less alone while trying. Mira called again. She'd been tracing the pulse, modeling its path, shape, modulation, decay. And she believes it's artificial, not sent to us, but through us, bouncing across the weakened atmosphere like a signal stuck in a recursive orbit. She thinks it's caught in a kind of loop, a survivor of something older. A distress call, no one answered, so it kept echoing. Or worse, a program set to awaken when gravity fails. Her theory is that it began after the polar magnetic field weakened past a threshold, that the signal might be a kind of trigger, not to warn us, but to activate something. She didn't say it outright, but I could hear the fear beneath her breathing. She ended the log with, either it's a remnant of us, or a reminder that we weren't first. That phrase haunts me, because in this world so much has been buried. Data, code, bones, myths, and maybe something else. Something designed to wait, to speak only when silence returned. Whatever it is, it doesn't ask permission. It broadcasts. Like I do. Like it's been doing this far longer than I have. And now, something new. Just before I started this transmission, a new signal came through. Clean, tight, a triple ping, followed by a pause. Then another. It's coming from Greenland. Somewhere near the fractured remnants of the old ice labs. It's unnatural. No Doppler shift, no fading, no scatter. Just a cold, consistent repetition. I've triangulated it with Mira's help. It's growing louder, not in amplitude, in presence. Like it's not just approaching, but unfolding, becoming part of the background. She thinks it's not just signal. She thinks it's countdown, and it ends tonight. I don't know what it's counting to. But I've prepared, reinforced the anchor lines, locked the shelves, bolted my boots, because if it happens again, if gravity lets go a second time, I'll still be here. This is Miles, still receiving, still surviving. Some of you sent stories. I've been sifting through the logs, voice messages scrawled across fractured bandwidths, like scripture on crumbling stone. Not all of them asked questions. Some were just declarations, confessions from the air. A man named Jonah, somewhere in what used to be Georgia, said he floated 3 feet above his daughter's grave for the entire 9 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't speak, just hovered. When gravity returned, he didn't fall. He landed, like the moment had offered him stillness. He said, "It was the closest I've felt to her since she left." Another woman, Amaya, recorded her breathing. That's all. 9 minutes of breath, unbroken. She said later that she hadn't breathed that deep since the fires. Said she felt carried by something not quite divine, but not human either. And there was this. A child, maybe 7, maybe younger, whispered through static, "I thought I was being born again, but outside." These aren't just stories. They're fragments of faith. Not the kind in books. The kind you discover by floating in silence and realizing you don't miss the weight. I don't pretend to know what happened, whether it was science or rupture or some God-pressing pause, but I know what it felt like. It felt like a moment where nothing demanded we stay. And yet, we did. We came back down. Not because we were forced, but because something tethered us that wasn't gravity. Something older, something like choice. Some broadcasts find me long after they're sent. Drifting, delayed, looping on forgotten towers. This one came from an old, coastal repeater stitched together with wire and prayer. A preacher, name unknown, rose during the event. Literally, he had been speaking when the ground abandoned him. The recording caught his sermon halfway through, midair, and yet his voice never wavered. He said, "This is not the end. This is the inhale before creation." Exhales again. He described the weightlessness not as judgment, but invitation, a moment to remember how it feels to be unattached, not just from the ground, but from bitterness, from grief, from fear. He said the world had been drowning in gravity, that maybe for 9 minutes we remembered our original shape. His congregation floated with him, some clutching hymnals, some each other. One woman sang, her voice a thread connecting them all. He called it an unbroken hallelujah. They came down softly, he said, not like a fall, more like forgiveness. I don't know if he's still alive. I hope so. But even if he isn't, his words remain. And maybe that's what faith really is. A voice that floats longer than the body that carried it. I've been thinking about Camus lately. The philosopher, not the station engineer, though both taught me how to fix things that won't stay fixed. Camus once said, "Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee?" He wasn't being glib. He meant that absurdity, the kind we're drowning in now, demands a decision. Collapse inward, or make the coffee anyway. Most days I make the coffee, even when the beans are moldy and the water tastes like copper. I brew it in a tin kettle held together with solder and luck. Drink it from a cup etched with names I don't say out loud anymore. Beside it, I keep a box of seeds, not because the soil's ready, but because someday it might be. The seeds are old, heirloom, untouched by the wet blight. I don't plant them. I trust them. Next to the seeds is a cassette labeled Spring 2021. It doesn't play anymore. Too much warp, too much ash, but I rewind it sometimes, just for the sound. Static, then silence, then a voice that almost sounds like music. I think it was a child humming. That's enough, most days. That, and the sound of something trying to begin again. Not everything that rises returns. Some things float away and stay lost. Some come back broken, and some return changed. But faith, the kind we cling to now, isn't about what lifts. It's about what finds its way back. It's the bird that remembers the branch, the voice that circles and lands, the signal that fades, then flickers back. That's what I believe in. Not escape, not salvation, but gravity's quiet promise that what matters still chooses to fall toward home. So if you're drifting tonight, wondering if you're gone too far to come back, remember this: somewhere, someone is still listening. This is Miles, still grounded, still reaching, still broadcasting, news from the north, and for once it doesn't taste like ash. Arc 9, the last confirmed research station near the broken edge of Nook, sent a relay last week. It finally arrived. Fragmented, delayed, but real. They've built anchors, not metaphorical, physical, tethers, weighted spires drilled deep into permafrost, or what's left of it, each one fitted with pressure sensors, gyroscopic stabilizers, seismic tension compensators. They don't prevent the drift, but they hold through it. They've identified something new, too: weight pockets. Localized zones where gravity intensifies, folds, then thins again, like muscle memory twitching beneath the Earth's skin. One of their scientists, a geotechnical named Isla, claims these pockets form when electromagnetic interference overlaps weak tectonic shear. She said, "Gravity is behaving like a scar. It remembers where it was broken." They've mapped 8 such pockets between Arc 9 and the edge of the Atlantic dead zone. Some of them can't hold birds, others press down so hard that air grows thick and heavy, like walking through sorrow. Still, it's hope, Hope with bolts and cables and steel laced into frost. They're asking for others to build the same. To share specs, diagrams, designs. Not to resist the collapse, but to grip the ground when it forgets to grip us. I've started work on a micro anchor here. Drilled down past the frost line. Laid in chain. Connected it to the transmitter post. Not because I think it'll save me, but because there's something sacred in trying. The world we knew ran on movement. This one runs on stillness. And stillness, it turns out, must be engineered. We've always built monuments to remember. Now, we tie ourselves to them to survive. A woman in Quebec tied herself to her husband's grave during the event. She didn't scream when she lifted, just sang lullabies into the dirt. She said she'd promised him she wouldn't let go again, and she didn't. In Montana, a man used an extension cord to strap himself to the bench where he first kissed his wife. He drifted slightly. Then the cord held. When it was over, he just sat there, didn't speak, just touched the splintered wood where her initials were still carved. In Istanbul, someone was found tied to a tree with red yarn. It circled their wrist 8 times, the same number as the child they lost. They left no note, just a photo pinned to the bark, still there fluttering like a flag for a country we no longer know the name of. I keep a nail driven into the frame of this station, wrapped a piece of wire around my ankle. Not enough to hold me, but enough to remind me. Because sometimes the only thing that keeps us from floating away is the story we choose to be tethered to. Not physics, not survival, just memory. And maybe that's always been our anchor. You hear a lot of stories out here. Technical marvels, survival hacks, scientific breakthroughs. But these quiet gestures, they're the ones I record most carefully. Because they're not about resisting the sky. They're about remembering the earth. Mira's latest transmission was different. Less data, more surrender. She said we have to stop dreaming of the old constants. That stability is no longer the shape of truth. That we must learn to live in flux. Her voice cracked near the end. Not from fear, from acceptance. She's been tracking a pattern. Not just gravitational anomalies, but psychological ones. People who resist the drift emotionally, mentally, experience more severe effects when the next rupture comes. Increased nausea, auditory hallucinations, temporal dislocation. But those who lean into it, who breathe with the pulse instead of bracing against it, they survive it differently. They return, not unharmed, but intact. Mira said, maybe adaptation isn't about learning new rules, but unlearning the ones we thought couldn't break. I've taped that to the transmitter, because even here, where I weigh down my words with care, I know she's right. I've stopped watching the clock. It slips too often. I measure time now by resonance, by how long the coffee stays still before it ripples. By the way, my breath catches before the air shifts. We are no longer living on a planet. We are living in its aftershock. And maybe that's enough. Not all healing is repair. Some of it is stillness. Some of it is waiting for the pulse beneath us to settle, for the drift to slow, for the anchors to hum in time with the crust. Maybe we're not here to fix what broke. Maybe we're just meant to hold on long enough to hear the earth breathe again, to feel it inhale with less fear. And when that day comes, we won't rise. We'll stay grounded because we remembered how. This is Miles, still bolted, still listening, still broadcasting. It's counting. And the sky is listening. The Greenland signal, the one we thought was a pulse, a leak, a ghost, it's become something else. It's clean now. Sharp. 3 tones. Then silence. Then again. They've synced with the sidereal clock. Not the one we set by our rotation, but by the stars. Whatever's behind this signal isn't counting hours. It's counting alignment. Every time it hits 0, the temperature dips by half a degree. The birds go quiet. My instruments hesitate. Something is coming. And this time, I think it knows we're here. I felt it in my chest. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition, like muscle memory pulling taut around a wound I haven't looked at yet. Earlier this afternoon, I watched the tether line sway. Without wind. Dust lifted slightly from the floorboards. And for a moment, just a blink, I felt my boots grow lighter. Only for a second, then the pull returned. But now, I'm watching the pressure gauge again. It started to hum, low, like a throat clearing beneath the crust. There are birds gathering on the far pole. Not flying, just standing, as if waiting for gravity to misstep. The signal now repeats every 63 minutes. It's speeding up. I've stopped pretending it's coincidence. Stopped pretending this is anything but a rehearsal. A reminder. The last time it happened, we lost time. People, memory, balance. This time, I'll be ready. Not to resist, just to witness. Because whatever this is, it wants us to notice it this time. And I think I finally do. The kit is small. I've laid it out across the floor like ritual. 1 flask of filtered water. 1 journal. Pages mostly blank. The cassette labeled Spring 2021. A spool of copper wire. A photograph of my brother from before the sky broke. I've reinforced the transmitter mast. Anchored the relay bolts into bedrock. The east window is shuttered with scavenged aluminum plates. Every object in this room has been weighed, labeled, numbered, prayed over. If I'm to fall upward, I want the station to stay. The straps are tight around my waist now. 2 tethers, one looped to the steel bracket, the other through the nail Isla hammered into the wood with her tiny hands. It's rusted now. I've wrapped it in cloth. Faith needs fraying edges to feel real. My voice recorder is already running. If I drift, you'll still hear me for 7 hours, maybe more if the solar backup holds. I've disabled the failsafe that cuts transmission during electromagnetic spikes. If this is the end, or something like it, I want the air to carry every second. There's a tone in the atmosphere tonight, not from the signal, from the world, like the wind's begun to hum in the key of waiting. I've tuned my body to it, slowed my breathing, lowered my center of gravity. You prepare for a fall by grounding, but this time I prepare by letting go. If it comes, if we lift again, then let this place be the last grounded voice you remember. This is Miles, fastened, focused, still broadcasting. Mira's last message came through an hour ago. No encryption, no diagnostics, just her voice, calm, certain. She's headed toward the Greenland node, the signal origin point. She thinks she can reach it before the next pulse. She said, if it's broadcasting from within the ionosphere, then it's using us as relay. She believes it's a trigger system, not destruction, a test. She spoke of strange magnetic densities in the region, of auroras moving against the wind, of deer standing still, not from fear, batiti, but awe. She believes this is the earth blinking, or something inside it, waking. Her voice cracked once near the end. She paused, then said, if I float, tell them I went willingly. That silence afterward, it broke something in me. Not because she's gone, because I think she understands this in a way I never will. There are people built to endure collapse, and there are people who lean into it. She was always the second kind. I'll keep listening. Not for her voice, but for the gap it leaves. The countdown is nearly 0. The tether line is humming. So am I. Not in song, in frequency. The pulse is rising. The pressure just dropped. I can feel it behind my eyes. If you're hearing this and you feel lighter, don't panic. Let yourself notice. Notice the pull, the shift, the sound the air makes when it forgets direction. Hold something. Or don't. Either way, know this: you are not alone, not in your confusion, not in your floating, not in your hope. If I if I rise again, I'll keep the transmitter open until the last coil unspools. This is Miles, still here, still falling upward, still broadcasting.